channel. I'm here today to do an exciting video, which is the beginning of my PhD. The first part that you just saw was actually filmed on the 17th of January, which was the day that I officially registered at Royal Holloway to start my PhD in Victorian literature. In a nutshell, my PhD is about pubs in Victorian literature, but specifically focusing on England, because I have an idea that I want to look at different parts of England through authors. So I'll probably look at the West Country through Hardy, the North through Gaskell, and then the South through Dickens and possibly Gissing and maybe some other authors. And I'm really interested in the difference between the city and the country and how that affects the pub's role in society and how far it reflects its society. I'm really interested in how far class and alcohol are connected. The idea that if a gentleman's drinking wine, that's much more acceptable even if he's drunk compared to if someone's drunk on gin and water, because of the class connotations attached to that. I'm definitely planning on doing a chapter on alcoholism versus the temperate society and that whole religious element that was involved in deterring especially the middle classes from drinking alcohol and taking sobriety pledges and things like that. I think that's fascinating, the idea of the pub being useful but also genuinely creating bad circumstances within certain families and communities. I have thought about doing actual field research of certain pubs that, like, especially for Dickens, he has fictionalised a lot of real pubs in London, but I think finding specific information about one pub is probably a bit wishful thinking and isn't actually realistic in terms of writing a PhD on that. But I'm definitely interested in going to some of these pubs, especially the ones in London that Dickens has fictionalised. One of them is actually part-owned by Ian McKellen, and I kind of want to just write to him and ask if I can talk to him about the pub as an excuse to meet him, but I don't think that's going to happen, sadly. I can dream. But I think in the end what I really want to show is how far it reflects or doesn't reflect Victorian society and its problems and its needs. Obviously pubs were around in the time where there were no supermarkets or coffee shop chains, so lots of people would need pubs as places to go and eat your lunch or to warm themselves by the fire. There are actual human needs that are fulfilled in pubs. I'm still on that early stage of reading and narrowing down and finding so many more avenues I could go down, but I'm just going to have to really be strict about what I decide to research. I think it's such a broad topic because almost every Victorian novel has some kind of alcohol or consumption in it, or a pub or an inn or something similar to that. Whether it's a saloon bar or a coaching house, they're just such common occurrences in Victorian literature that I could write about almost any novel. So I'm definitely going to do a London-based chapter to start off with. I've read Barnaby Rudge, so I think I'm going to start with that and I'll Meet Your Friend, and comparing the idea of the landlord and the landladies and the idea of them being a law unto themselves in these novels. But Katie at Books of Things recommended me to read The Netherworld by George Gissing, and I previously wrote a dissertation chapter on New Grub Street by George Gissing, so I'm slightly familiar with his work and it sounds perfect. I actually started this in October and then just got distracted and didn't get past page 60, so I'm going to read that, and I might write a chapter on that or include that somehow in my London chapter. Dickens is much jollier than Gissing. I mean, he was much more successful in his own life. Gissing literally had that archetypal tortured writer life. He wasn't particularly highly recognised or celebrated in his lifetime, and he was constantly ill and had failed marriages. He has such a miserable life, which is completely recognised in his writing. So I'm not saying it's going to be a fun read, but I think it would be a good novel, and actually I think he's an underrated Victorian writer, so it would be nice to discover a bit more of his work. The PhD is 3 to 4 years. You have kind of 3 years to do your research and then a writing up year, and you can take how much that as you want. I would like to do it closer to 3 years than 4, but my track record is to need every last second to finish. But as long as I finish and in the time, I'm okay with that. As long as I get my PhD, that's all that matters, even if it does take a whole 4 years of my life. That's okay. So when you start a PhD, you're actually not officially a PhD student, you're an MPhil student, and you have to pass your first year upgrade to become a PhD student. So my first year upgrade will be in October, so I'll probably have to submit my chapter in September, which is about, I think, 10 to 15,000 words I'm aiming for that chapter. and then I have to give I think a half an hour presentation. I have a viva in front of I think 3 people, so my supervisor and 2 other Victorianists from my English department, which is really intimidating because I feel like I've got ages, but actually no, I really don't. I have so much work to do. I've definitely been reading too many of my own books compared to how much work I should be doing. It's just distracting having so many books that you want to read, but I've got to knuckle down now. I think my reading will massively slow down. It should slow down. Unless I'm reading a book for my PhD, like guessing, I really need to give myself a public record of saying I need to read more PhD stuff and a lot less of my own books, because I'm never going to get them out great in time otherwise. So there we are, that's the beginning of my PhD. I'll probably give you an update when I submit my chapter. And then after I've passed my first year upgrade, I don't have any more kind of checks until I hand in my whole PhD, and then I have a final viva where I have to, again, defend my research for about half an hour in a presentation, and then I get marked. So a PhD is slightly different with the grading system, because if you pass, your level of pass is kind of on how few or many corrections you get. So if you pass with major corrections, that's like the worst level, I suppose, and then if you pass with minor corrections, which is what I think most people get, that's great, and if you pass with no corrections, which is incredibly rare, then that's almost like getting a distinction. But really it's a pass or fail thing, and I'll just be happy to finish it. And then I'll be a doctor, and you know, maybe one day someone will say, is there a doctor in the house? And I'll be like, yes, but not that kind of doctor. But if you want Dickens, I'm your girl. And on that note, I think I'll end. Comment below if you have any questions or thoughts, or any recommendations of Victorian literature with pubs that aren't more mainstream. I would quite like to look at some Victorian authors that aren't the obvious heavyweights like Dickens and Hardy and Gaskell. And I'll see you soon for more bookish shenanigans. Bye!